Today we have John Thompson talking about 1927 AJS 500 single. This bike, I've been around it most of my life, growing up and going to my uncle's motorcycle shop, Robin's Motorcycle Sales. It was always a fixture in the showroom there, right from when I was a little kid. And then through to when he closed the shop, he sold it to Jim Harrison.
Yeah.
And then John was able to get the bike off of Jim, and it was really nice because when John had it, it was in Manitoba. Now it's going to a nicer, albeit maybe wetter home out in Newfoundland.
Yep.
But it's probably my favorite bike to look at. It's a little bit in pieces now, but we'll have some pictures that we'll splice in here. But it's for me, it's just I smile every time I look at that bike. It's going to be sad to see it go, but I hope to see it fully restored in a few years. Maybe we'll make a trip out to Newfoundland and do another restoration. But anyway, thanks again for John Thompson taking the time, making the time when he's as busy as he is, just to be able to shoot this for us. So thanks again, John.
Well, you're welcome. I came across the bike in the first rally because Jim Harrison brought it out to the rally as a non-runner, and that was in 2001. And after the rally had finished, Jim was loading the bike, and I said to him, well, leave it here and I'll get it running for the corn roast, which duly did. And so 2001, it was at the corn roast, and I gave Jeff a copy of the photo of Jim, Ross Metcalf and the Chiquettes standing behind the bike as it was then. One of the main differences between as it was then and photos I've seen of it from the 80s, which I've got copies of, is that in the 80s it had floorboards, but by 2000 it had footrests. Anyway, digress. So, being a little bit of a AJS fan, I tried to buy it off of Jim, which he didn't want to sell, understandably, but it stayed up here in the shop from 2001 right up until now. And whilst I was looking after it for Jim, I was also collecting parts for Jim to restore it. Parts are pretty hard to come by, and so by, I think it was 2011, I'd got a set of chain guards for it, another spare carburetor, because the carburetor on it was rather worn, and some other little bits and pieces. But in 2011, just after I bought the V-twin AJS, Jim asked me if I still was interested in buying it. And so I said yes. He said, well, how are we going to agree on a price? I said, you tell me what you want for it. If I think it's reasonable, I'll give you a check now. If not, we might haggle a bit. But he gave me a price, I thought it was reasonable, and so I acquired the bike. And of course it sat in the corner again whilst I collected more parts for it. And a couple of years ago, I decided that I'd collected enough to start work on the restoration. So hence, you see it's been partially dismantled. All the bits are carefully stored packed in a box up there, ready to go. And unfortunately, just after I started this, I got sidetracked in the restoration with a bike called a Donald, a 1931 600 side valve. And so both of them have been coming along slowly in the last couple of years. And then obviously this last year got totally sidetracked with the move to Newfoundland, and so progress has been a lot slower than I would have hoped. But I know the motor runs, and it runs very well. It's mainly cosmetics and putting it back to what it was like riding around in Winnipeg in the 30s. So I've got a couple of pictures of it. One I think is 1931, the other one's 1936, of it in the MMC lineups for runs. It's in the famous 3-picture collection of outside Northwest Cycle, and the other one is outside, the 31 picture is outside the Hudson Bay building. So you can just about see the front wheel and the controls on it, so I know what they look like. I've managed to acquire the correct speedo for it and other bits and pieces. Correct handlebars, because these have been rotted out and brazed in by Tiny. Some other bits, small bits and pieces that will make it look like the 31 to 36 bike again. It's not going to be nut and bolt factory correct. It's not going to have the repairs to the frame smoothed out. They're all the warts on it are going to stay, because that's the bike and how it ended up. I was a bit concerned about the gas tank, because it had a couple of bunks in it that had been pugged up with Bondo, and I managed to get a new tank, which is up here. I'll show you in a minute. Made in India. The flipping thing weighs a ton, but it's beautifully made, and all the pieces fit. So instead of what Tiny had with some ply with a bit of rubber over for the knee pads, I've got the correct knee pads, and they just slide in here like a glove. It's beautiful. All the other stuff fits, but they must have made this out of a battleship because of the weight. But it's all correct, it fits nicely, and I had to do a bit of a modification because it was just slightly high on the top, and I had to grind down where the oil pump sits. So that's what that is. That's the only bit that hasn't been packed. Otherwise I'd show you the rest. As you know, it's a 500cc overhead valve. People have called this the big port, but it's not strictly true, because the big port actually referred to the 350 and not the 500. But the name sort of gets abused with the different models. What else can I say about it? Yeah, now I've got the correct saddle. I've got to make the correct mount for it, because unlike how it was mounted by Tiny on the side. Originally, it mounted like a bicycle saddle down the tube. Other than that, it's a really nice bike to ride. It starts first kick when you know how. At the corn roast, where we had it running, in keeping with tradition, we said, you know, if you can start it, you can ride it. And several people got blue in the face kicking it, including Terry Newstatter, who I thought would have managed it, didn't. And after each person had worn themselves out, I walked up to it, gave it one kick, and it fired up onto the next person. This happened about 5 times, and Greg O'Kane called me the bike whisperer at that point. Eventually, we got Jim Reimer to start it, but that was with me standing beside him, telling him exactly what to do and where to set all the levers. So, yeah, people rode it round, including Jim Harrison, and yeah, it was a fun day. But it hasn't been seen out running by anyone since that day. I've had it running around here a couple of times just to keep it lubed up, but its big problem was where it had been used for ice racing. The jets and the carburetor had been bored out, and so in the summer it was running rather rich and eating plugs because it was petrol washing the ball. So I didn't like to run it much, but it did get exercise every now and then.
My memory was seeing a big glob of solder on the float.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you fixed that or if you changed the float, but that was...
I've got another float for it.
Yeah, that was one of my memories.
Yeah.
How does that go up and down? I'm
Yeah.
thinking to myself.
The other one that is a big lump of solder is the slide itself. The back of the slide has been filled in with solder and nicely shaped. And unfortunately, you can't, the slide is 2 D-shaped pieces of brass. And they're totally unobtainium. In the spare carburetor I got, they were also worn. I found a guy in New Zealand who was making mousetrap carburetors, the Binks mousetrap, and selling them for a pretty penny, about $5,000 I think. But I got in touch with him, and although he could supply me with new jets, he couldn't supply me with any slide parts. So I've looked at it on the bench, trying to figure out what I can do. And I figured out now how to make the 2 new slides, and that is, I'm getting 2 pieces of rectangular brass, soldering them together, and then I'm putting those in the lathe and turning it round. And then I'll cut the cutaways into it, and then all I've got to do is heat it up, take them apart, and I've got 2 slides. But I've got the brass now, I just hadn't got the lathe time to make them. But that's what I've got to do, just to sort the carburetor up. The kickstart was another bit of a nasty. It had been the kickstart lever had been brazed onto the shaft, and on the other side of the shaft, which engages in the ratchet here, is a quadrant. And when they engaged, because there was a tooth or a couple of teeth missing on the quadrant, the kickstart was a fair way down, so you'd never got a good swing on it, which is probably why most people wouldn't start it. But I acquired a brand new kickstart mechanism. So the quadrant, the shaft, and the kickstart lever itself. I was chuffed to bits about this until I found out it didn't fit in the hole, because the shaft of the one I bought is slightly bigger. So I've either got to bore the end of the gearbox or turn the shaft down a bit to make it all work.
How close is it?
It's about a 1/16 bigger.
Okay.
So it's not much, but the back of the gearbox is a bit fragile and has been welded up before.
Yeah.
So until I got the gearbox out and really inspected it, cleaned it up, I haven't decided which way I'm going to go. But there's all little things like that that just make it fun restoring the bike. Because nothing ever fits. You know what it's like.
You know, it's almost 100 years old.
Yeah. Everything looks almost the same between the 350s and the 500s, but they're not. I bought a new mag platform. I got hold of a mag platform on eBay, because the one on here had been destroyed at one point. Yeah, chuffed to bits, got this now. And it didn't fit. It's a 350 one. And the centres are just slightly smaller where it mounts. So I've got to do a bit of cutting and shutting, welding to extend the brackets. No big problem, but it's always something like that to make it work. So that's about it for the bike. As I say, it's going to now reside in Newfoundland, in Conception Bay, and hopefully I'll be sending you updates over the next little while, showing you how it's coming along, what bits have been repaired, what is beyond repair, and hopefully soon a video of it running again, which I think will make everyone
spectacular.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, one other thing about this. I was at the South Beach Motorcycle Show one year, one of the early South Beach shows, the first or second one. And I was on my V-twin AJ, and a guy came up to me pushing this guy in a wheelchair, and he asked me about the bike. Oh yeah, nice. And he said, yeah, but the bike I'd really like to know where it is that there was a 27 AJ around. I said, well, it's normally about 12 feet from that one. So I was speaking to Fred Mawson.
Oh, Freddie Molson.
Yeah. So he gave me some information about it, and he was going to see if he had any pictures, but unfortunately that never came to fruition. But I did speak with him, because I believe Tiny always referred to this as the Mawson bike, was it?
I can't remember. There was his Norton International that was always parked right next to it.
Yeah.
And that had a story with Chuck Noakes.
Right.
That was he didn't die on it. He died chasing it.
Yeah.
Right, and then so the brother bought it, and you know, because the bike shouldn't be raced again. It's just sort of a memory of his brother, and then it was in tiny shop forever, sitting right alongside this. Yeah. And then they ended up taking that bike back, and I think it went out to their farm and sat in the hen house or something somewhere, and I don't know what happened to it.
No, I'm not sure though. I know he referred to it as someone else's bike or whatever.
Yeah, it could be.
I think it was Fred, but I'm not sure.
Della would know. I'll ask Della.
Yeah.
No, very cool. Well, thank you very much for taking the time out to this. I know time is very precious to you with the move happening, but really appreciate this, and thanks for being able to accomplish.
I'm glad we actually got round to it in the end.
You know, me too. It's I would have hate to have it leave and not have done a rust and restoration on it, because the bike deserves that. So yeah, well, thank you for accommodating me and
You're welcome.